that prepared the food today. Thank you very much. I heard Tom's wife, Ruthie, got up at 4 o'clock to finish making the casseroles this morning, so we can't do anything on our own, can we? And I had somebody tell me earlier today, the reason we had such good attendance is we're all just looking for a reason to get away from our wives, right? Just kidding. Everybody's got to have a sense of humor. But before we present Mr. Bonhoeffer, Pastor Ross shared with me a couple of pieces of literature that if you're interested in studying a little bit more about Dietrich Bonhoeffer, how many of you knew who he was? And that's what drew you here this morning. Excellent. That's great. Pastor Ross, if you wouldn't mind, and then I'll get into the introduction.
And remind me what oh, okay. I'm processing all this stuff in real time. So it's like, what? Just turn me in the right direction. I'll do something. But I started getting into Dietrich Bonhoeffer when I was like 16, 17 years old because someone recommended his classic book, The Cost of Discipleship, which is basically Bonhoeffer's rundown of the Sermon on the Mount, if you want to like capsulize it. And it's a classic. It's a good read. It's a powerful read. It'll give you a lot of insight into what Jesus is teaching. And so that's one that I can recommend. I've also recently read Eric Metaxas's book on Bonhoeffer, which is well written, very well researched, and it's a great read. And then not too long ago, there was a movie came out about Bonhoeffer. I saw it in the theaters a couple of months ago. I'm trying to think of the exact name of it, like Bonhoeffer's Pastor Spy, something rather.
Pastor Spy, yeah. Prophet.
Yeah. So anyway, that takes you into his story, and was highly regarded as a good version of Bonhoeffer's life. So anyway, just letting you know a little bit of my acquaintance with Dietrich Bonhoeffer through his writings and through writings about him. So there you go.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Pastor Ross. And this men's prayer breakfast, as I mentioned, is something that's ongoing, and we're hoping to just continue building it towards some other great events that we might do along the way. Could involve some more speakers, could involve musical performances, who knows. But I'm going to go ahead and distribute a form that I just put together very professionally, asking if you're at all interested, to just jot down your name, your phone number, and your email, because John sends a text message out every month, very dutifully, to our men in the men's prayer breakfast. And if you'd like to be included, please sign up on this as it makes its way around the room. Please pass it from table to table. Here's a pencil in true traditional form. Thank you. And we'll get on with our performance. And following we are also going to be distributing a basket at the end during the question and answer period. If you feel so compelled to donate a little bit of money, I like to help our performers that we bring to town because they do travel great distances to arrive sometimes, and they've done extensive research to prepare these little performances. So please keep that in mind, and we started the basket right here, and it'll be coming around. The following performance is based on the many letters and speeches Dietrich shared about what was shaping up in the German church. Take yourself back to the evening of October 6, 1944 at 7 p.m. Dietrich is writing a letter to his fiancée, Maria von Wiedemeyer. 18-year-old Maria and 39-year-old Dietrich have been secretly engaged for over a year. This letter is one of the few letters from Tegel prison that was discovered in the 1970s by her sister. Bonhoeffer had been allowed to send and receive correspondence at Tegel. However, it all came to an end when he moved to the Gestapo prison in Berlin. The Gestapo was closing in to Bonhoeffer's involvement in the July 20th, 1944 assassination plot to kill Hitler. In all probability, Bonhoeffer had very little to do in the plot other than to know key persons making the plans. What is unique about this letter and several others that were sent to Maria is his real thoughts about the state of the German church in Germany and the plight of the Jews. Mr. Bonhoeffer.
October 6th, 1944, 7 p.m. My dearest Maria, sending thoughts and my love from Tegel Prison, cell 92. I pray that your family is well and in good health. I sense by your previous letter you are worried about my safety. Please, please, do not worry about my safety. We are all in God's hands. God has been with me here at Tegel with a guard by the name of Corporal Linke and 2 other guards. For some reason, Maria, they like me. I don't know why, but they treat me decent. They have allowed me to have books, my Greek Bible that you've sent, which I adore, writing material, and they managed to send and receive all my correspondence. Thank you for sending the books, Maria. Because of their treatment, I have had moments to share God's love with them. As you are aware, Corporal Linke last month obtained a position for me in the sick ward at Tegel. God has a sense of humor. There, hidden under a bed in the sick ward, is a radio. And every evening we gather together with the guards and listen to the BBC as to how the war is going. We heard about Normandy, D-Day. We have followed General Patton's army across France. We are hoping that this war, the guards and all of us as inmates, will soon be over. In fact, we heard the words of the Allied Supreme Commander, General Dwight David Eisenhower, remark that he feels the war is going to be over by Christmas 1944. What good news is that? Corporal Linke has heard rumors that we are to be removed to the Gestapo prison in Berlin soon. Please do not worry. I really believe I shall receive the same treatment as I have received here at Tegel Prison. Now, Corporal Linke has shared with me, Maria, why I was initially arrested and sent to Tegel. It was because of Operation U-7. Wonderful operation. We managed to smuggle out of Germany into Switzerland 7 Jews. And we planned, or had planned, to send as many as we can. Also, coupled with U-7 is the case they are building against me for speaking out against National Socialism and the plight of the Jewish question. Because I have been involved in the Abwehr, which is a secret organization opposite of the SS and the Gestapo, I know all about the final solution. They are also trying to connect me with Colonel Klaus Stauffenberg and his plot to kill Hitler. I am not understanding, Maria, why the majority of churches refuse to take a stand and openly oppress the evil of the Nazi regime. I cannot wrap my mind around this. It was for this very reason, Maria, that I could not stay in America. I wanted to stay in America. I felt we were making progress. And the one positive thing about America was attending the Obsidian Church in Harlem, realizing that the Negroes have a way of worship that was beyond my comprehension in Germany. It was so alive, so vibrant. They even asked me to teach Sunday school, which I proudly did. But I knew, Maria, I could not stay in America and allow the German church to go through the torments without participating in their cross. If I would not return to Germany, I felt as if I could not have a part in the rebuilding of the German church after the war is over. As you know, I returned. You were not happy with that. You wanted me to stay in America, where I would be protected. But what about the cross that we all must bear? You have brought before me many times Romans chapter 13. I have really done an exegetical study on Romans 13. Submission to the government authorities. Obedience to the state is an ordinance of God. Paul's opening words brings about the obligation of Christians to submit themselves to the government authority under which they live. But how in God's name can you be obedient to the socialist Nazi regime and be obedient to the Sermon on the Mount? I'm not understanding, even after an extensive Greek study. A Christian's conscience declares that he must obey the ordinances of God, and God has ordained government. But should we be allowed to follow a government that is diabolically opposed to the Sermon on the Mount and Christian ethics? A government that daily slaughters men and women and children and babies because they're Jewish. And what about the Negroes? What about the college professors? What about the gypsies? What about the homosexuals? What about all those individuals under the arms of Adolf Hitler in Europe that do not fit into the Aryan race? And Hitler is having them eliminated. Where do we stand? Where has the church been? Where's the church? Why did not the church speak up as anti-Semitism started in 1932? Where was the Catholic Church that for years has held the banner of the sanctity of life? And the Pope makes an agreement with Adolf Hitler. You leave us alone, we will leave you alone. And the Catholic Church becomes silent. Where was the church, Maria? Where was the church? Where was the church at Kristallnacht? And all hell broke loose in Berlin. When German entered a Jewish business, set it on fire, broke the glass, placed a sign, forbidden Juden. My grandmother, who always shopped at a Jewish bakery, was refused to enter because it was Jewish. Where was the church? Where was the church? Where was the church when Jesse Owens came in 1938 to the German Olympics? A Negro from Ohio State, and participated and beat the Germans in the long jump and the 220 and the 100-yard dash to the point where Adolf Hitler was furious, threw his hat down and walked out of the stadium and refused to greet Jesse Owens because he was a Negro. Where was the church? Where was the church when the Nazis did not allow two Jewish men on the relay team in the Olympics to run because they were Jewish? Where was the church? Where was the church? Was it cheap grace? Was that the church? A church without the cross? A church without commitment to humanity? A church ready to stand in the place of a Jew or a Negro or a Catholic or a homosexual or a gypsy or a Jewish family day by day as they disappear and end up in work camps and concentration camps? Where is the church? Justification without repentance? Preaching forgiveness without requiring repentance? Baptism without church discipline? Communion without confession? Grace without the cross? I made a list, Maria. What was given to me when I came back from America? I'm going to write this out for you now. The national church demands immediate cessation of all publishing and distributing the Bible in Germany. The national church declares that to it, and therefore, as a German nation, it has been decided that the Führer's Mein Kampf is the greatest of all documents over and above the Bible. Not only contains the greatest, but embodies the purest and truest ethics for the present and the future of Germany. Mein Kampf, replacing the Bible. The national church will clear away from all its altars, crucifixes, Bibles, pictures of saints will be gone. On the altar, there must be nothing but Mein Kampf. To the German nation, and therefore to God, the most sacred book, and to the left side of the altar, a sword that represents power, not weakness, the weakness of a Jesus. On the day of its foundation, the Christian cross must be removed from all churches, cathedrals, chapels, and it must be suspended by the only unconquerable symbol, the swastika. The swastika now flies in the German church where there once was a cross. Maria, as you know, I have taken up my cross. And we know what the cross means, don't we? It means death. Did Jesus not tell us to take up our cross and follow him, even if it means death? A Bible verse that has been on my mind over the last several weeks here in prison. For this one thing I bestow and besought for the Lord Jesus. My grace, he said, is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my sins, and also in the power of Christ that can do away with my sin. Therefore, I will take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, persecutions, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, I am strong. Maria, I end this letter with my love, my thoughts of you and your family, and with these words. Not to act is to act. Not to speak is to speak. God bless. Love, your Dietrich. Thank you.
I'm going to proceed to open the floor to questions, and I'll come and see you with the microphone if you want to raise your hand. And let's hear it for Mr. Bonhoeffer one more time, please.
Thank you.
And we'll be picking up the plates after the event, so you don't have to worry about that. Thank you.
Questions?
If I remember right, you had many siblings, 7 or 8, twin sister. Were they implicated in your guiltness, and were they persecuted, or?
They were persecuted. My sister married a Jew, as you know. Fortunately, with the program of U7, trying to get out the first 7 Jews into Switzerland, which I had an agreement. You have to remember, I belonged to the Abwehr. I was brought into that by the plot to kill Adolf Hitler. The Abwehr would be a spy group of Germany. And therefore, I could travel all over Europe with my credentials from the Gestapo as an Abwehr agent. So we managed to get my sister out and my brother-in-law and several other Jews. Initially, the program was closed down once it was found out, and suspicion started to hang around me. I was followed by the Gestapo. My church at Finkenwad, the confessing church that we started, had around 100 students. I was the seminary professor, I guess you could say, at Finkenwad. And the seminary was closed down. When I was at Tangle Prison, most of the students were sent to the front, the Russian front, which was a death sentence. The others that they felt would be a problem were executed. Out of the 100 students I had at Finkenwald, we lost just every one of them in one way or another. I really don't know how many survived the Russian front. Hitler couldn't care. It was like a meat grinder. Send men in. It didn't matter to him. The millions of Germans that were killed in Russia. So yeah, we tried to protect our family. Most of my family were arrested by the Gestapo, but they were released. My fiancée, Maria, was arrested by the Gestapo. She was released. You have to remember, after July 20th of 1944, with the Stauffenberg attempt on Adolf Hitler's life, and he had several attempts, did not succeed, but Hitler went on a rampage, and because of the plot of July 20th, 5,000 people were executed, including General Field Marshal Rommel. His best general, the one that General Patton admired, had to take poison. Hitler was insane, and he killed off his best generals, thinking that they were involved in the plot. Probably Bonhoeffer was not involved initially in the assassination plot, but he knew of the players involved in that. He was more concerned about the silence of the church, as you could tell in the letter that he wrote. He was furious that the German church, especially in 1932, anti-Semitism starts very quiet, and then it grows, and then it grows on college campuses, and it grows, and then it goes into the public in other areas. And before long, anti-Semitism is everywhere, and now people begin to get hurt. And that's what happened with 1932 and with Kristallnacht. You know what Kristallnacht was? The night of the broken glass. Other questions?
I was reading based upon preparing for your presentation.
Excellent.
I read where 2 weeks after you were hung, that Hitler took his own life.
Correct.
So in the prison that you were in, the second prison, was it different from the first prison?
You're talking about the
of-
Gestapo prison in
Yes.
Berlin. Absolutely. The last letter, and what I read to you was the exact words, of course, of him, would be probably one of the last letters that he wrote Maria. They were found in about 1970. Maria's sister, who was still alive, found these letters. I've read them all. And I've condensed some of them. So some of the words that you heard today were condensed from other letters. He was taken to the Gestapo prison when the Nazis felt that he might have had something to do with the July 20th assassination attempt of Hitler. He was moved to Buchenwald concentration camp. Then eventually he was moved to Flossenburg. He was only at Flossenburg 2 days in April 9th, or April 8th, and on April 9th he was executed. He was hung with piano wire, not with rope, with piano wire. That was Hitler's favorite mode of execution, to execute somebody. Hitler probably, I'm pretty certain, he probably signed the death warrant himself. He wanted to get rid of the Abwehr, which really was responsible for these assassination attempts. Not all the German people drank the Kool-Aid. You understand that. There's a book, and I don't mention it. Bonhoeffer wrote a book called The Theory of Stupid. And have you read it, The Theory of Stupid? You have to read it, Pastor. And it's a very good. I read it. I reread it. I just started laughing. I mean, how could he be so comical when he's looking at the cross? Or he's looking at death. But it's a good book. And the book that you mentioned, Eric Metastas, you've got to read that book. That should be on your list. Read it. When I was young, I was required to read one book every week throughout the summer, along with piano lessons. Hated it. But then I realized that Dietrich Bonhoeffer could have been a concert pianist. He was an excellent pianist. So, did I answer your question? Yes, other questions? Over here? Yes, sir.
Was there ever a time in prison that you feared for your life?
No. Not from my readings, no. As a Christian, the word fear should not be in your vocabulary. That's how Dietrich Bonhoeffer. Sometimes we become a culture of fear. We're afraid. We're afraid of this. We're afraid of this political organization. We're afraid of this person. We're afraid of this group of people. And it has an effect. It's like a cancer. Bonhoeffer, we called it a cancer, a growing cancer. You know, as far as my readings and so forth on him, he was never afraid. He was sad, very sad, despondent, because he loved Maria. They only had a year together. I don't know what would have happened if they got married. She was 18. At that point, he was 36. That's a big age difference, you know. She was highly intelligent. Unfortunately, she went on. She had 3 marriages. They all ended in divorce, and she died of cancer, I believe, in 1974, 75, Maria. But fortunately, we did get a hold of her letters that Dietrich had written her. And what you heard this morning was a good portion of, you know, I probably raised my voice. He probably would have not done that in prison, but I wanted the emphasis to be there. Because he could not understand the church, why the church did not speak up when anti-Semitism started. Now, that's something to think about in our country right now. Right now. What's going on in the universities? I mean, this is not a political statement, Pastor. We have anti-Semitism in this country, and the church needs to do something about it. I'm not Jewish, but I would give my life to a Jew. Absolutely. And many people did, but there were many that put their life on the line. Oscar Schindler, Corrie ten Boom, must I go on? The zookeeper's wife. There were many, many Gentiles that risked their life to save Jews. Other questions? Yes, sir. Right in front of you, Jim.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Choir director. In your studies of the Sermon on the Mount, what is your thought or your interpretation of the word blessed? I've heard such things as happy, and I've always thought it's got to be something different than that.
Content.
Content? Yeah.
Content. And you have to realize that Bonhoeffer, that I'm a pacifist. I did not believe in war. Okay? And Maria was a pacifist. Her father was killed on the Russian front. Her brother was killed. My brother, I lost 2 brothers that were killed in World War I. So we saw, in Europe, you saw a lot of death. Lots of death. And I became, I guess I'm speaking, I'll just step out of character. Bonhoeffer was a pacifist all the way up until, as an Abwehr agent, they started seeing these pictures of Buchenwald and Flossenburg and Auschwitz, and these pictures were coming in because nobody knew exactly what was going on. And I think when Bonhoeffer started viewing these pictures and hearing what is going on with these concentration camps, and I use the word Negro not out of respect, but that's the word that they would have used, when you realize that Negroes were disappearing, Gypsies were disappearing, Jews were, all these people were disappearing, college professors. Anybody that did not go along with Adolf Hitler, he changed his mind. He no longer was a pacifist. He felt like he needed to do something to stop the insanity. And he used that word with in relationship to the book he wrote, The Theory of Stupidity. The legacy of stupidity somehow has to stop. And it wasn't stupidity intellectually. He wasn't talking about that stupidity. Okay, you have to realize that most of the hierarchy in the SS were college professors. Huh? Oh, yeah. Okay, you're talking about a land of what? Beethoven, Mozart, opera. These men were highly intelligent men. But how could they play a Mozart, let's say, or a Mozart sonata in C major as people are marching to the gas chambers? What's that? Yes. So that was the stupidity he was talking about. Yes, other questions? Yes. Takes about 2 years to present a program. So I've been doing research on Bonhoeffer, well, since I was in seminary. I started my interest in that. Yes.
Did, the question is asked several times in what you were relating of what Bonhoeffer said about why is the church behaving this way. Did he ever come to a clear diagnosis in his own mind, you think, as to what was the underlying cause of the church's failure?
He talked a little about indifference. The churches at that time were more of the ecclesiastical gubagok, what they would do for services that would disconnect them to the realities of people suffering and so forth. When my wife and I went to Dachau, we spent 2 days at Dachau. I got sick. I couldn't stand being even in that concentration camp. And there's a little town, a stone's throw. In fact, I took a stone and threw it over there into the village of Dachau, where your churches would get out on Sunday. This is brought out with Oscar Schindler. They would get out of the service on Sunday, and the little white specks would come down all over them like snow. Well, you know what that is. It's from the furnaces. So how in God's name could these people come out of church on Sunday morning and see the flakes coming down from the concentration camp of Dachau right next door and not do anything about it? And they didn't. I get very passionate for that because I don't want to see it happen again. That's why Eisenhower took videos of these concentration camps, because Eisenhower said someday somebody's going to say, it never happened. It never happened. So it's just something. When you go to, has anybody been to Dachau, Auschwitz, the concentration camps? My wife and I, we went in just for a few moments. We couldn't take it. We walked out. I said, I don't want to be. The evil is still there. That was just my feelings. Okay, I'm not, and I'm glad I went, but I don't want to go back to Dachau and Auschwitz. Too much death. Too much stupidity. Other questions? Yes.
I just wanted to say that you're talking about going someplace where most people cannot go to. So if you ever have an opportunity, go to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., and you'll see exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Because they have thousands and thousands of photographs and documents.
Shoes, glasses.
You need to go there. Every school kid should have to go there.
I'm a teacher. I teach at Genesis Christian Academy, which is a private school in Ashland. We take field trips. And I took a field trip, took my students down there to Washington, D.C. Also, we deal a lot with the honor bus for your military men. We have what they call an honor bus where we go down to Washington, D.C., and my students escort the veterans. But that's a good point. But I teach this in school. You have some paperwork. That was a paper that I wrote that my students have to know about Dietrich Bonhoeffer. They have to know his writings. My students have to know about Oscar Schindler. My students, we spend 2 weeks on the Holocaust. They have to know all about it, or they don't graduate from my class. They also have to know the Constitution of the United States. And it was really, I was not a popular teacher this year because they had to memorize all 27 amendments in the Constitution. And they had to memorize the 7, so they were not happy when they had to memorize the Declaration of Independence, the first 2 paragraphs, or the Gettysburg Address. But when you go to a private school, you can get away with that. Yeah, 27 amendments. Other questions anybody would have? You don't know what they are? You need to come to my class. Question?
I have a question and observation. My wife went to Europe, maybe 15 years ago. and she was on a tour, the young girls talking to him on the bus leading the tour. The fact that they were predicting they would be not denied is taking place. She did not believe this occurred. So it's prevalent now in the young people in Germany.
Right. And they've had a problem in Germany, especially just recently, with the anti-Semitism on the increase with cemeteries. And I guess that's far away from me, but I'm more concerned about Columbia University and Harvard and Princeton, that this is going on in these schools that were tremendous schools of, wow, I mean, Harvard was started for ministers, wasn't it, in Princeton? Missionaries, you know? And now we got to the place, I saw a video, I can't even watch news anymore. I get so upset. It's just, what's wrong with these kids? You know, free Palestine, shoot me, please. I mean, free Palestine, help me. But anyways, I don't know. They don't even know what it means from what, sea to shine or whatever they're saying. That's stupid. Yeah, they have no idea what that means. You know, stupidity. Any other questions anybody would have? Any questions on the U.S. Constitution? Declaration of Independence.
So if you look at your flyer that's on the table that Ken distributed about his Living History Productions, he does perform around the whole Midwest as a variety of characters. He's a very talented guy, does a tremendous amount of research.
Keep it up, brother.
But most of his characters are not fictional. Most of his characters are brought about from history, and all of his characters are, and he studies them immensely and brings them to the life. And we really admire Ken a lot. He does a lot for our Living History shows.
Enjoy doing that.
And sort of modeled it. We've modeled our series after what Ken does. So I'd like everybody to please give another round of applause to Ken Hammontree. And a big thank you to the Men's Prayer Breakfast and John B. Bart for allowing us to do this. And we hope to do it again. And thanks for coming out and joining us today. Yes, he will. He's going to do Johnny Appleseed for the Historical Society locally.
In his backyard, because he does Johnny Appleseed.
Thank you all very much, and we'll clean up. You just have a safe trip home. God bless everybody.